welcome to this edition of the Richard Urban Show. And we're very happy to welcome Andrea Elliott. She's running for the Board of Education here in Jefferson County, West Virginia, in the May 10th election, which I'll remind everyone is the only election for the nonpartisan positions of school board. So that's going to be very important. So Andrea, please introduce yourself briefly.
Well, my name is Andrea Elliott, and I am a mental health therapist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Maryland currently, and working to move myself to West Virginia in time so I can see as many clients or children and families as possible. I currently have been living here for 5.5 years. I love it in West Virginia. I'm originally from Montgomery County, Maryland. And I searched high and low for my log cabin. I have it, and I'm very happy here. So
Okay.
next step is my community. Very active in my community, and that's the reason why I decided to run for the Board of Education. I have no children of my own, so this was just something that I took to very organically, and it just grew into very, very lovely relationships in my community. And that's when I decided to run on their behalf.
All right. Well, what do you think are the three most critical areas facing Jefferson County public schools right now?
I think the most critical one would be the trust. The trust has been broken between parents, children, faculty, school system. I think that is the first issue. And there's several things that led to that issue, I think, and that was, school board meetings and parents not allowed to talk, not being heard, their issues not being brought to bear, no change in those solutions. The second thing was, as the science began to change regarding the masks, we didn't change our policies and procedures within the school system. So our children continued to be separated, masked, quarantined for long periods of time if they showed, minimal symptoms. And that right there led to speech delays, social functioning delays, mental health issues that I saw rise 300% in the wrong direction. Suicidal ideation. It's very sad, very sad. So the trust would be the first issue. Policies and procedure, I don't think match the circumstance. So I think they need to be looked at, evaluated for their efficacy. And if they're not effective, they need to be scaled in the direction that they are effective, which might just be tweaking a little bit or a lot in some cases. Third, I think would definitely be, mental health is right up there for me because I saw it firsthand. But I think it's the unity of the community. So I'd like to reintroduce families to the community and reintroduce peers to the community as well, because that's really what human beings are meant to do. Is we're meant to congregate and together. The minute that we bring people together again is the minute we're going to see some of the mental health piece. But we have to do that.
So let's segue. So you're talking about greater parental participation, would you say?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a related question. So back, I guess, last year, like in the fall, the National School Board Association, I think is the right title. Anyway, in Alexandria, the nationwide organization that schools belong to, they were responding to the letter, from the Department of Justice, where parents referred to as terrorists. But still, as the Jefferson County Board of Education has not withdrawn from that organization, as a lot of other states had. What's your opinion on that matter? Should we withdraw, we being Jefferson County schools, from that organization?
You mean without a teachers union?
No, not the teachers union. the National Association of School Boards. That was the organization where that a lot of states belong to. It's not the teachers union, but that yeah, they do lobbying and things like that. But they were the ones who were complicit in encouraging the letter from the Attorney General saying that parents should be dialed back at meetings because they're like quote unquote terrorists and that kind of language.
Yes, I would definitely think that they have no place in the school system at all, at all. The very point or the premise that parents don't have a right to bring their grievances to a school board meeting is astounding to me. This is the problem. The longer I don't hear you, the longer I ignore you, the longer you are concerned, the louder you're going to get. And that's just a human being. These are not terrorists. These are parents who are concerned about their children and are not getting relief. So no, I would not, I do not think they have a place in the school system at all. That goes against the grain of what we are trying to do, and that's link children, families, and teachers together.
Okay, that fair enough. That's clear. One issue I've noticed in my studies or reading is that there are a lot of administrators relative to students. Like there were before, I think it's declined. Maybe you can inform me on the current enrollment. Some 9,000 students in the county. And I'm sure it's declined though because of the whole COVID thing. And then there were like 50 some administrators, and there's like something like 20 some thousand in like Kanawha County, and there's 70 or something administrators. In other words, what I'm getting to is those aren't the exact numbers, but about. So the administration here is very top heavy. They are really careless, in my opinion, with taxpayer funds. And also related is the issue of transparency. Like I was looking at the report they published in the spirit of Jefferson, like the annual report. Well, that's all nice. They published that report, but it's very vague. It's like salaries, $20 million. Well, whose salary? Which is for teachers, which is for the administration.
Yours and yours.
It's not useful. So I guess there's two separate issues here. Can we trim up the budget and not waste money? Because it seems like there's an excessive amount of administrative expense. And can we get more transparency? Would you like to address those two issues? Financial transparency, especially.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I would be, if elected, I would be conducting audits because there's too much going on at the administrative level. And what I'm hearing from teenagers in high schools is that their teachers are running, they're leaving, and they are very short-staffed, that the disciplinary situations at school creates an unsafe environment for them. So teachers are leaving. So yes, I would be auditing the administration and then removing money from that budget and hiring more teachers, but creating an environment for teachers where they're safe.
Yeah,
where they have the support.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big issue. I mean, it's not a new issue, but obviously it's very concerning if teachers don't feel safe. And I work with a nonprofit program that deals with sexual health education around sexual abstinence before marriage. And I've been in school systems, mostly previously worked in a DC metro area, like in DC. I've been out here about 6 years. But point being, I totally understand about, teachers, can feel sometimes not safe because of the usually just one or two students. So do you have any ideas? What would you do about that?
Well, I think cause and consequence. We need to have consequences for bullying behavior in school. And I do know that that has been softened over the last couple of years. And the reason is it's couched as many different reasons, but I do know it's been softened. And what happens is you get this kind of feeling that you can walk in and you can do whatever you want. You can punch somebody in the hallway and there's no repercussions. So the repercussions would need to be in place and people held accountable for their behavior. In addition, I would not ask victims to sit with their perpetrators to try and resolve an issue. That is re-victimizing victims, and it happens all the time in schools. So
Okay.
yes, I have a very strong plan for that, and that would just be to put things back in place that were there to ensure the safety of teachers
Okay.
and other students.
Let's segue one of my favorite topics, because like I mentioned, I work with and have co-founded a nonprofit with my wife, the purpose of which is to help children succeed by abstaining from sex before marriage and from drugs and alcohol, and working toward, successful family formation. All that being said, I think you should be aware, but in any case, are you aware of the case of Willie Belmont from this past year? He's a
Is
former
that
teacher that was arrested for having sex with one of the students um, at Jefferson High School. Yeah. Well, in any case, there's an interesting story. I'll give you a short backstory. So I was at the board meeting in January, a little over a year ago, January 21, and they were like reviewing sexual health curricula, and I have an interest in that. So I gave a testimony. So then I mentioned, how it'd be good if there was a program that emphasized that absence from sex before marriage is the expected standard. So Mr. Belmont, who was then a teacher at the Jefferson, said, "Well, Mr. Urban, actually that's not very realistic. That's kind of old school, and those not exact words, and that's not going to happen." Then come September, we find out that Mr. Belmont, not find out, he was arrested because he was allegedly, and now he's been indicted by the grand jury. So he's, not convicted yet, but he was allegedly having sex with a student at school in the closet multiple other times, had exchanged inappropriate comments or images and things like that. So I find that extremely ironic, but not just ironic, very disturbing. So of course the school, said, "Oh, we've removed him from the school, and now he can't come to school." But my question is, are we really making the right environment in the school? So to shorten up the question, make it more direct, would you support at least providing, if not making it primary, abstinence-centered health education where students could understand the benefits of abstaining before marriage? Do you support that kind of making that available?
I do, and I think I'm going to cross that with. So we do know that cognitive ability, like what I'm able to receive and understand based on my knowledge and how my brain is functioning and the age of my brain, right? If I'm 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 19, I'm not going to get the full understanding of what this sexual education now is being taught. I'm not going to understand it. So what it's going to do is create confusion. So what I hear you saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, is, teaching abstinence as well kind of protects kids until they can make that decision, cognitively make that decision, and understand the full consequences of it.
Yeah, that's true. But I would put it more succinctly as making sexual abstinence before marriage, or teaching that's the expected standard for school-age children, which, by the way, under President Bill Clinton, was an accepted federal standard in like mid
It was.
90s for sexual health education that was supported by federal grants, i.e. everyone agreed on it. What was that, 2.5 decades ago? Well, what happened? That's
Yeah.
the right thing. Do you agree that's the right thing? School age children shouldn't be having sex, or do you have a different opinion?
No, I don't think they should be, because again, they aren't cognitively available to be able to understand the whole consequence of it. So that plays into it. As a mental health therapist, I have to look at where that person is right now, and I have to consider their cognitive ability as well. So when we're teaching things like sexual education, I don't know about you, Richard, but I do know I received health class, and I received health class in 7th grade, but I never knew anything about my teachers and their sexual habits. That was not brought into my education,
Right.
and I'm
And
quite
I
sure
mean,
it
that's not
wasn't brought
necessarily what
into
we need to
yours.
know, but I mean, I think
Right.
so. One thing I want to put out there, and maybe you'll have, or if you want to comment on it, I think we being as a community, you're talking about the whole community, parents, children, concerned people like yourself, who aren't parents, or that kind of thing. We should be promoting like this kind of idea. And then, it's a fact that, children who graduate from high school, don't have kids until they're married, and get a job are like 90%, literally 90% less likely to live in poverty, and all kinds of other issues will be much less. So in one generation, that could make a huge difference. Yet I think that's not being, I think it's not being emphasized enough. Do you have any further opinions on it?
It's not being emphasized at all. That's not what's being taught now. It's kind of gender fluid, it's kind of bisexual. There's a lot of things being explored now through the school system, through the curriculum. That's not in the curriculum anymore. That's something that I would be looking at putting back in, and I would be looking at common sense curriculum like math, science, English, biology, health class that is limited to health class, and does not go into sexual orientation and things of that nature.
I agree that
So,
that doesn't need to be included. And well, exactly. So I think the basics, like we were talking about, should be included. But when the way it's taught, so-called, okay, I think you're probably familiar with the term comprehensive sex education. That's not good. Comprehensive really means basically not emphasizing, a standard that students should wait. And it's also teaching about a lot of things like you mentioned, whether it be, you know, basically absence-centered health education teaches everything, but it doesn't emphasize different methods of contraception. And of course, it doesn't also get into all these other offshoot topics, which are inappropriate unless parents want to introduce them. If parents want to do that at home, that's their business, but it's not the school's business to introduce those other topics.
yes, I agree. And what we're finding now is we're finding that there's a lot of theory and ideology being taught.
Right.
This is being now, and we need to keep that in perspective. These are theories and ideologies. So keeping that in perspective is very, very important. So I think returning back to the basic curriculum of math, science, English, biology, physical education, home ec, things like that, that needs to be the core. That needs to be the core education, and things like sexuality and religion need to be taught at home.
Right. Although, yeah, I mean, ideally, you shouldn't have to teach them at all. But I say, since there are pretty much every school in the country for the last 20 years been teaching some kind of sex education / HIV/AIDS prevention since probably around 1990, whatever. Now, what is that? 3 decades ago. So since that is being taught, although, some parents would say that shouldn't be taught, then it should have a clear standards, and the standard should be, school-age children shouldn't be having sex. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so a clear understanding of that curriculum, I think, is very, very important, but also a parent's option to opt out. I believe in parents' choices
Yes.
and children's choices to opt out of that part of the curriculum if they'd like to.
Yeah, they could, or they could choose the alternate one. I mean, honestly, that should be the standard curriculum. That's something, that could be looked at. But in any case, in my experience, that can be an optional program minimally, you know. All right, let's move to some
Right.
other topics. I think we're talking about the budget, and a related issue is, so my understanding is school enrollment has declined due to the COVID thing across the board, COVID situation or crisis, or however you want to look at it, has declined probably, I understand, 10% or more everywhere. I don't know the Jefferson County statistics. Perhaps you could enlighten us. But the short question is, do you think it's good for parents to homeschool? And what do you think about like the new um, just coming in law where the money will follow students and it can be used for co-ops or other types of education? Do you support other types of education than public schools?
I do. I do. Again, choice. I think parents should be able to make the choice for how they want their children to be educated. Um, but I am seeing on the other side, not but and, I am seeing on the other side of that, the children are very afraid to go back to school. And I do believe that it is the children, like the high schoolers, that can get the other children back in school. Because children have become so socially isolated because of the pandemic and the way we handled it, that they now have agoraphobia or agoraphobia, where they just are afraid to leave the house. So it's gone from this to something very large, and they're going to need our support to have them leave the home, if you will. So while I do, of course, I'm always going to support school choice, always, and that money following that child, because that is that child's right and that parent's right as a property, paying proper taxes. And I was also look at a program to try and bring more students back in to either the co-op or either the private school or either the public school,
Do
because
you
a
know
lot of
the
them are just
enrollment
staying home.
statistics? I hadn't researched or asked for them. Do you know like what the enrollment is, say this year of 22 to 23 versus say the year of 19 to 20 or something like that?
I
Beginning of
don't,
19?
Richard, because I know that school enrollment is going on right now for this next year. But I can tell you that 60% of my students that I were working with could not go back to school. And I have 10, 11 students that I work with, and they're from Maryland. So this is not too far away, but I see students in my neighborhood, kids in my neighborhood, who are not going to go back to school. They're
Is it
not.
because their parents are afraid, or what's the reason if
The
you
children, this child especially that I'm thinking of, is terrified to go back to school. Terrified.
is it because of the whole
And this
masking
is,
thing or other reasons, or what do you think?
well, something that a lot of people don't talk about is the masking. When we mask people, we cover the very essence of communication. And Richard, as you look at me, if I'm okay, if I'm not okay, and you can make the decision what to do next. But if I pull that from you, then it's just kind of this odd communication, right?
Right.
Same thing happened to kids, is they're not able to communicate because they can't get a feel for what's being spoken or the mood of the person, the body language. This is the problem, is people don't know and now don't trust what they're seeing, so they're afraid to go out.
Okay.
So my goal was to get them out and have, other children help them do that.
We'll cover a lot of topics. For the few minutes we have remaining, do you want to share anything else of why people should vote for you on May 10th?
Well, I think I bring a strong skill set of problem solving. I'm a solution focused therapist, and I'm very good at reading situations and gathering information and kind of uh, helping people mediate the situation. This is a very volatile situation right now. Parents are very upset. They want to see change. So to be able to bring people together, I think I have a very strong skill set for that, and that's what's needed at this point. Plus, just the going through the audits, going through the administration to find out where we need to cut back, where we need to move forward, and also assessing the needs of the kids in the classroom to be able to get the teachers that will work with that situation. So I do think that I bring a skill set that can work through this healing process from the pandemic. And then policy and procedure to make sure that those things don't happen again. We just
Yes.
adapt common sense strategies. Common sense strategies.
Okay.
So,
Well, this has been very instructive. I want to thank you for your time this afternoon. We'll get this up on visionroot.org and, make it available for everybody to see. And we'll be interviewing other candidates. So I do urge everybody to get out and vote on May 10th. It's very, very important, as you can see. And, so do get out and vote. Yeah, and thank you again for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
well, thank you, Richard, for the invitation. I so appreciate it, and I look forward to. We are having an event on the 23rd of April
Okay.
at the top of our community, and it's on the 23rd from 8 to 11.
Where is it
coffee, and
again?
it's going to be at the Orchard House at Blue Ridge Acres, and it's not a fundraiser. It's a roundtable discussion.
Okay, who will be there? Just you or other candidates?
Myself, and I've invited all the other candidates. And it goes from 8 to 11.
Where can we find out? Is there any website or place to find the details?
Well, I do have my Facebook account. It's Andrea Elliott for JC,
Mm-hmm.
Board of Education.
All right. Well, thank you
Yes,
again.
see you here, Richard.
I'll go. I'm Richard Urban. Thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.